they were asked about defensive coordinator. We just heard him say they're not married to any one scheme. They love the scheme when you have the right players for it. Let's talk about that for a second. I think we know what the players that you need for this scheme. You need a killer defensive line, four across. And I don't know how the Niners are going to put that together. They have Nick Bosa, and they have a first-round pick that they'll use on a defensive tackle or a defensive end. That's 2. I just don't see. It seems like they need a defensive coordinator who knows more than just that one scheme. And I think that's what they alluded to a little bit. Like Sorensen knew that one scheme, but he couldn't adjust because he hadn't been exposed to other schemes. So does this mean that they're just going to call up Steve Wilks and say that they're sorry?
No, they'll never do that. I mean, my biggest thing is that they seem to be really galvanized around the wide 9. And I think the reason why is, I mean, if you look at it now, Nick Bosa, a lot of what Nick Bosa brings, it really doesn't come up on the stat line. I mean, especially when you have an underperforming defensive line that he's had. So his numbers are naturally going to take a dip. But honestly, Nick Bosa is not a 4-3 defensive end. And he's damn sure not a 3-4 outside linebacker. So what are you going to do? You're going to put him at the. You're not going to put him at D tackle on a 3-4. He's not going to stand up. So really, this defense is kind of predicated upon Nick Bosa being in the best position possible. If you change this defense, then you basically just wasted $34 million a year, because if you think that his performance is going to dip now, it's really going to dip because naturally Nick Bosa can't do much outside of that wide 9 split.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting is the questions about the D coordinator are sort of centered around scheme. Like, hey, will you consider being a little more flexible there? Like, I mean, isn't that the conversation we had 2 years ago with Steve Wilks? They tried it. They brought in someone from the outside. He had a different background. He wasn't from the Legion of Boom or Pete Carroll, and they didn't like it. As soon as they lost one game, they pointed the finger at him. So I wonder how open they really are. And I think what's interesting too is, like, I don't think they really understand what they're looking for in a defensive coordinator. I don't think it's a scheme issue at all. I don't think it's a system issue at all. I think I forgot this, but I think I had this epiphany years ago with Saleh. The reason Saleh got hired as a head coach, the reason D'Amico got hired as a head coach, is that they were already head coaches. When you're the defensive coordinator on the 49ers, you have an opportunity to be the head coach as a defensive coordinator, because Kyle is an offensive coordinator. He's not really doing head coach things. And the defensive coordinator can fill in or not. And I don't think Sorensen could. I think Wilks did when he came down from the booth, and the other guys did too. And I think what they're looking for now is another guy who could sort of lead from the sidelines. I don't know. Does that make sense to you? And do you feel like there are guys out there who can fill that role?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. We talked, like literally this makes sense to us. I mean,
yeah.
Let's just take it back, all right? When Robert Saleh was here, Robert Saleh was the defensive coordinator, but he was the spiritual leader of this team. He was the guy who...
I like that concept. That concept.
I mean, and for what it's worth, I know you guys, think, Coach is going... Yeah, but he's going into Disney World with this, but it's a real thing. You got to have some type of physical manifestation of the standard. That's the way it is, right? Like, and Kyle, a lot of what Kyle brings is his intellect. He brings his knowledge of scheme, right? But Kyle doesn't necessarily bring aura. I wouldn't, like, Kyle doesn't walk in the room and I would turn my head.
He's low energy.
Yeah, and you need a guy where you'd be crazy not to believe that the game day guy, the sideline guy, the guy that actually brought forth the effort that you saw in practice that carried over into games, that was all Robert Saleh. And he had a lot of guys singing his praises and a lot of guys kind of evangelizing that edict throughout the team, and players felt it, and it was visceral. And what happens when you get things like that is that little stuff that we see happening that kind of crept in last year and really showed itself this year, you kind of take for granted, like effort, playing to the whistle, swarming around the ball, giving your best effort on games on no matter what the opponent is. Like, we never had the playing down to our opponent issue until some of these guys left the room. And then Robert Saleh goes on, and then you get another tip of the spear guy in D'Amico Ryans, former player, hard as iron, definitely going to raise these guys up from pups. And what is he going to do? He's going to push the standard. He is the physical manifestation of playing every day, making sure that no matter win, lose, or draw, I don't care about the scoreboard. We are a certain team that plays a certain way. And then when he left, all right, and Coach Wilkes came in, Coach Wilkes was low energy, but to this point, Coach Wilkes got dragged out of the booth, but they were almost gaslighting him into being Robert Saleh and D'Amico Ryans. They were talking about we're not really feeling him, and he needs to come down to the booth and
look us in the eye.
Look us in the eye. And all of that really was, hey, they didn't want to come out and say it. I don't think guys realized it, but we're missing something from this team. And we don't, not only are we not getting it, but everybody knows not to get it from Kyle. So you got to do it. Mm-hmm. And what happened? Wilkes came down, ingratiated himself at the sideline, and what did we start seeing? Wilkes pushing himself onto the field, having to be, by the end of the season, Coach Wilkes was having to be held back from walking on the field. He was that animated with getting around the team. And even then, you saw cracks. You saw effort being an issue. In the playoffs, what was the number one game plan walking into the Super Bowl? No, the Lions game. What was it? Effort. Kyle wants to see a championship effort. John Lynch had to come speak to the team. That's not his job. That's Kyle's job. And now that the biggest thing that they did.
But if you want your team to play with high energy, like Kyle can't convey that message. That's got to be someone like Dan Quinn or Dan Campbell or someone else, Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans. Energy, enthusiasm.
You got to be a part of the man. You got to be the man. The times make the man, not the other way around. Dan Campbell looked crazy talking about biting off kneecaps, but look at what his team is now. He's the real deal.
It's possible that Ben Johnson is a brain with no personality and no leadership skills, and he needs someone like Dan Campbell. It's possible that like these types of coaches who maybe look down on each other, oh, you don't know any scheme, or you're not a leader of men, that they actually need each other and have a symbiotic relationship. Does Kyle understand that? Sometimes I think he does, and sometimes when he elevates someone like Nick Sorensen, I think he's completely oblivious and lacks self-awareness.
I just don't think he understood that how important it was or where he's going to get it from. I almost feel like he outsourced that, almost kind of like he looks at it as almost like the offensive line. Well, I understand it's there, but if I have enough to get around it, it's not that much of an issue until it comes up. But what's crazy about this year that you saw is, okay, forget wins and losses. Forget the 6-11 record. What bothers me the most about this year is that you clearly saw a different level of play from week to week. It wasn't consistent. And what really bothers you about this season is that we lost, cool, but I would have been okay with going 6-11 if I would have seen us playing the hardest we could play week in and week out. And it would have been, hey, this is just what we are, guys. We're a tired team, and finally we need a rest. But no, you saw the Chicago game. You saw the offense in the Detroit game. You saw all of us. Well, Kyle's motivated now. Now he's motivated? Now? It's like, oh, well, Brock, look what Brock did against Detroit. Well, what happened against the Rams? It's like, so there was way too much cloak and dagger. Now I want to have effort. Now I don't. Kyle finally admits, oh, we're not necessarily a good team. We don't have the players. Later, after the Bills game, it was just way too much Johnny come lately, day late and a dollar short, where you didn't see the urgency right away. The moment they knew they were bad, we would have saw ridiculous urgency. But it was almost like they were almost finding out how bad they were throughout the season. It was a slow drip.
Yeah, and so now they got to figure. To me, what's so interesting about this defensive coordinator search is like they may not realize it, but they're actually doing a head coaching search, and they're looking for a head coach of this team. They're going to keep Kyle, and Kyle is for a lot of reasons, but he's essentially the highest paid offensive coordinator in football. And you could like his offense, you could think it's a great advantage to the team, fine. But they're searching for a head coach, and the leadership supersedes the scheme because you know what the scheme is essentially going to be. So when you look at these candidates on that level, like look at Jeff Ulbrich. He just had an opportunity to show what he could do as a head coach. Robert Saleh got fired. He's gone. He gets the Jets. They go 3-9, and the defense gets worse. I'm not interested in Jeff Ulbrich.
You know what this is,
Steve
Grant?
Wilkes? What?
We're on the organ donors list for a heart.
I mean, just I just want to point out, Steve Wilkes was the interim head coach for the Panthers the year before he came to the Niners. He went 6-6 on the freaking Panthers. So I don't know that Jeff Ulbrich is any better than Steve Wilkes. I'd rather get Steve Wilkes. Like, they need Robert Saleh back really in the worst way. If they don't get him, I mean, they could go get Gus Bradley. Gus Bradley's enthusiastic. He's a lot like Saleh. He's been a head coach, but does he have like aura? I mean, he's been a failure. He just got fired. I think it's Saleh or bust, and Saleh's getting head coaching interviews. I don't know.
I mean, I think Saleh. One thing that you have to understand is that, okay, Saleh is cool. I would love Saleh to come back, but is the Niners defensive coordinator job that sexy of a position? I mean, we've got overpaid players. All right, we got to go into the draft. The defensive line is done. We need to retool it and get a pass rush. We're already going to be sitting here where trying to get Dre Greenlaw back. Mooney Ward is all but gone. You're sitting here with the injured Talanoa Hufanga and a promising rookie in Malik Mustafa, but you really don't have
Greenlaw.
Yeah, you really don't have a free safety. All right.
Yeah.
And you need a linebacker to come in behind Fred, and you need a pass rush on top of it. And you got Renardo Green and Diamador Lenore, but Isaac Yiadom ain't it, nor is Irak Yassin. They gotta go. So, and then on top of it, you're gonna have to be gaslit into being the motivator for this team while the head coach sticks his head in the play call sheet week in and week out. So you're really gonna have to be the tip of the spear. Unofficially, though. It doesn't seem like it seems like a young man's job, like somebody who has the energy to do that. But I don't see a retread or somebody who knows their worth coming to take this job and be happy about it.
Yeah.
Like, what's Kyle going to say? Hey, I want you to come in here, and then definitely during games, that's all you. They don't talk to me. They talk to you. All right? Yeah. You hype them up. You slap hands. That's all you.
Someone quits, you got to handle that, okay? Because I'm going to be calling plays.